As we continue from understanding how to identify, document, and manage mold risk, we now shift into an equally important concept: how mold is perceived versus how it actually impacts a property. In today's real estate environment, mold has become highly publicized, often creating fear and confusion among buyers and sellers. This section focuses on separating fact from fiction and understanding how real estate professionals should respond in practical, real-world scenarios. Media coverage has played a significant role in shaping public perception of mold, often exaggerating its dangers. Stories about toxic mold and contaminated homes can create unnecessary panic, leading buyers to overreact or sellers to conceal issues out of fear. However, experts within Arizona, including epidemiologists from the Arizona Department of Health Services, suggest that mold problems are often overstated. The key is not to ignore mold, but to understand it in context. One of the most important takeaways for licensees is this: mold is everywhere. Testing any home will almost always produce some level of mold detection. This does not mean the property has a mold problem. In fact, indiscriminate sampling can create unnecessary stigma for a property, even when no significant issue exists. This creates a critical decision point for agents. When a client asks whether they should conduct mold testing, the agent should not give a definitive answer, but instead provide guidance and resources. Recommending credible information, such as materials from the Arizona Department of Health Services, allows the client to make an informed decision while protecting the agent from overstepping their expertise. The focus should always return to observable conditions. If mold is visible, if there is a musty or earthy odor, or if there are signs of past water damage, then there is likely a legitimate concern. These indicators, rather than test results alone, are what should drive further investigation. This aligns with the duty under AAC R4-28-1101 to exercise reasonable care and avoid misrepresentation. Consider a practical example. A buyer requests mold testing on a home with no visible signs of moisture or damage. The test results show the presence of mold spores, as expected. The buyer becomes alarmed and considers canceling the contract. In this scenario, the issue is not the presence of mold, but the misunderstanding of what the results mean. Proper guidance could have prevented unnecessary concern and protected the transaction. Another important factor is individual sensitivity. Not all people react to mold in the same way. While some individuals may experience no symptoms, others, such as children, the elderly, or those with respiratory conditions, may be more vulnerable. This variability reinforces the importance of individualized decision-making rather than blanket assumptions. In cases where mold contamination is significant, the risks are real and should not be minimized. High concentrations of mold spores can cause allergic reactions, respiratory issues, and structural damage to the property. In extreme cases, remediation can be costly, requiring removal of walls, replacement of HVAC systems, and extensive repairs. This is where mold transitions from a perception issue to a material fact requiring disclosure and action. A real-world example highlights this distinction. A school in Arizona experienced severe mold contamination due to a poorly repaired roof. Water intrusion led to extensive mold growth, ultimately forcing the closure of the building. This reinforces a consistent theme throughout this course. Mold problems are almost always tied to unresolved water issues. From a legal and professional standpoint, the agent's role remains consistent. Do not diagnose. Do not minimize. Do not create unnecessary fear. Instead, identify red flags, recommend appropriate resources, and document all actions. This approach aligns with both ADRI requirements and the broader duty to act in the client's best interest. As we move into the next section, we will expand beyond environmental concerns into broader legal risks, including fraud, misrepresentation, and ethical obligations in real estate transactions. The lessons learned here, balancing knowledge, communication, and judgment, are critical. Because in real estate, what really matters is not just what is true, but how it is understood and communicated. Online discussion. Why can mold testing sometimes create unnecessary problems in a transaction? Answer: because mold is naturally present in most environments, testing will often detect it even when no significant issue exists, potentially creating fear or stigma without a true problem. What should an agent do when a buyer asks about mold testing? Answer: provide credible information and resources, recommend professional consultation if needed, and allow the buyer to make an informed decision without offering expert conclusions. Why is visible evidence more important than test results when evaluating mold risk? Answer: visible mold, odors, and water damage indicate actual conditions affecting the property, while test results alone may not reflect a meaningful problem.